So I'm very excited to go ahead and get started because two of my dearest friends are here from Boulder, Colorado. And this is Dr. Roy Steinbach and his wife, Debbie. And I know them very well. And so I'm not going to say much about them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize my face so that you can see the full screen. And there they are. Hi, you guys.
Hi, Melanie.
I would love for both of you to tell our audience a little bit about what you do here in Boulder, Colorado, and what Mindful Family Medicine is really all about. I'm wondering if maybe we could start with Roy, and then Debbie, can you especially tell us about what you do? Because I think it's really unique.
So I'm Dr. Roy Steinbach. I'm a board certified medical doctor, so MD, and my practice is a little bit different. I'm a pediatrician, and we have a holistic practice, which really means I use a lot of traditional Western medicine in addition to kind of combining it with natural medicine, really trying to find whatever works, supports the body in the most gentle and supportive way, trying to minimize side effects. Oftentimes that's natural medicine, but of course at times we use regular conventional medicines like things like antibiotics or whatever is needed. Though albeit I'd say probably significantly less than most doctors' offices. I initially had an interest in nutrition, kind of personally, just from being an athlete and wanting to kind of maximize my own health. And that led me down the rabbit hole of learning about supplements and herbs and really kind of what you would consider natural medicine. So my practice has a big primary care component. I see a lot of just healthy well kids and kids with minor health issues. But I also do treat a lot of kids with chronic health issues, so autoimmune issues, digestive issues, thyroid issues, lots of eczema and asthma, all chronic conditions, autistic kids, things like that. So that's kind of the basics about me. And that's actually how Debbie and I met, because she was a wonderful nutritionist in town.
Exactly. So I'm Debbie Steinbach, and I'm a holistic health and nutrition counselor. And the primary focus of my practice is teaching people to use food and occasionally some supplemental nutrition as medicine. And I work primarily with people with chronic health conditions, digestive disorders, autoimmune disease, and really with people who are just trying to heal more naturally with, as I said, food and some more natural remedies. And Roy and I have an office together in Boulder where we work with a lot of the same families. His practice is Mindful Pediatrics. My practice is Mindful Nutrition. And together we're Mindful Family Medicine.
That's great. You both did that so well. I could not have covered all that. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about coronavirus for sure. But Debbie, I wanted to touch a little bit on what you just said, which is just this idea of using whole foods to come to a better, healthier place. Mm-hmm. And of course, the people that follow me on social media, they're mostly concerned with picky eaters, garden variety picky eaters, all the way up to extreme picky eaters. And we know that overnight, those kids aren't going to be able to eat a lot of vegetables, whole foods, all the things that I know your family serves all the time. Yep. So I think everyone listening understands that this isn't going to happen tomorrow in time for the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. We know that. But what I really wanted to make sure everybody understood was, what does it really mean to follow a whole food diet, and why is that so important?
Okay, so the way I always define a whole foods diet is that a whole food is a food in its whole original form. So essentially, it's the food the way that nature intended for it to be. So I always think it's helpful for people to break that down category by category. So when we start with vegetables, that would really encompass most vegetables. So having like any vegetable in as close to its natural state as possible. And what sometimes confuses people is when I say natural state, that doesn't mean that you need to eat it like raw. You can definitely cook it, prepare it however you want. But, all vegetables, all fresh vegetables are whole foods. And the same for fruits. All of those are whole foods. Where it gets more confusing for people is when we get into the next category. So we have carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are whole food sources of carbohydrates come in two forms. And that would be your complex carbohydrates that are, like I said, in their natural state. So the ones that people would know most would be things like oats, rice, sometimes quinoa, millet. My favorite is buckwheat or toasted buckwheat, which is kasha. So those are carbohydrates in their whole form. And then the other complex carbs are your starchy vegetables or your vegetable starches. So that would be things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, rutabaga, turnips, et cetera, et cetera. And then as far as whole foods that are proteins, that would be either animal or vegetable proteins. So animal protein, pretty obvious, chicken, fish, turkey, et cetera. And then vegetable proteins like beans or nuts or seeds. So when we're talking about a whole foods diet, those would be the categories that encompass a whole foods diet.
It sounds, you do a beautiful job of really simplifying it, because I think when people first read about it, it sounds overwhelming. And it really is more of a whole foods lifestyle than anything else. Would that be correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And for all of you listening, I have to tell you that Debbie has a wonderful blog on her portion of Mindful Family Medicine and under the nutrition category. And Debbie and I are both gluten-free. And so I love to follow her recipes because they're always yummy. And I've been over to your house several times and tried a lot of these recipes. So I really want to encourage everybody. And in a little bit, I'll actually post the link to some of those recipes so everybody can take a look at those as well.
Terrific.
But tonight, we're really focusing on not only the coronavirus and what's happening in the world today, but what can we really do to help our kids optimize their immune system? And it would be very similar for us as well, right? I mentioned earlier that the kids that I'm working with, they're going to learn overnight how to switch to a whole foods diet. That is ultimately where we want to get to. But one of the things I wanted to make sure we covered, and the two of you are so knowledgeable about, is what vitamins, supplements, should kids be taking? And we might also want to chat about, if we have some extreme picky eaters, what if they couldn't swallow a pill? Like, what alternatives would there be?
Let's start with food.
So I want to give you some ideas about supplements. And I think you had mentioned to me once that there are 4 foundational supplements that you start with.
Yeah, you want to start with the supplements, and then we can circle back and talk about the question that you were just asking about is like, what if your kid is a picky eater to an extreme picky eater? What can they do if they're not going to adopt a whole foods diet overnight? So that they can transition more toward that, because we definitely have some thoughts there.
After we hit supplements. I love that idea. Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah, we always kind of tell people, because I get to see a lot of these kids first that end up then seeing you, Mel, and then also end up seeing Debbie. And so, when I'm sort of making the diagnosis or trying to help the family out, a lot of times I'm kind of telling them that what the ideal is, but that realistically it's going to take a little time to get there. Maybe working on like what you've taught us a lot about, sort of the anticipatory anxiety about it, or a lot of these kids have sensory integration issues and they need to kind of unwind some of that before we can make the real headway with their eating. So while we're waiting, supplements can be a really nice kind of, insurance policy to make sure they're getting the basics. The fundamental things that we generally talk about are, and I'd say not necessarily in order of importance, but multivitamin. Most people are not getting enough vitamins and minerals to their diet. We know that the food that we eat now, even if you're eating an excellent whole foods diet, organic, predominantly organic, is not as nutritious as it was 30 years ago. The vitamin contents, the mineral contents really decreased pretty significantly from the factory farming that we do. And then the lack of good soil and things like that. So that's one thing. So multivitamin is a nice little insurance policy. With kids, people always say, I don't want to have any sugar in it. And ideally, I would say that too. But realistically, if you're going to have something with any significant amounts of B vitamins, you're going to need to make it a little bit better tasting, because B vitamins taste absolutely terrible on their own. And so most vitamins, I'd say, as long as it's got less than 5 grams or somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 6 grams, which is a teaspoon for a full serving, that's probably the best you're going to get for something. There are some that have less. And if you don't have a picky kid, one, you may not be watching this, but B, then sure, you can get away with using less sugar. So, and there's a couple brands we wrote about. I don't know if you want to tell specifics. I really love Zymogen makes one. It's called Active Nutrients. That's a very high quality. It's a hard chewable. Also, we use the Vitatabs from Claire Labs. That's probably my favorite. Just a little, it's really well priced, excellent, all adult quality activated vitamins, really good. And then sort of for the really more picky kids and the gummies, the best you're going to get. I like the Smarty Pants vitamins. I think those are real decent. Again, they're probably the lowest on my list of those three, but fine. And then sometimes powders are necessary. And the one that I typically use is from a company called Metabolic Maintenance.
Okay.
And we have all these things on our online store and at the office as well. So yeah, and then the dosing depends. Most of the time you can get it right off the packaging. If you have a really young child, you'll definitely want to consult with someone who knows how to dose this stuff for young children.
And I can see people are already commenting. Can I post the links to your online store? And I'm more than happy to do that when we're all done here. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can see people already asking about that.
Yeah, and in our blog post on the coronavirus, we called these the foundational four. So it'll be really easy for people to find what we're talking about.
I'll post that as well.
There's actually direct links. If you can click right on the post and it'll take you to the online store and show you the product.
Exactly.
So that's number one, is a multivitamin, and that's kind of like, to be honest with you, probably my least of the important ones, but it is an important one. The second thing I would say is probably probiotics, because from a holistic perspective, and I think even from a mainstream perspective, people are understanding that the gut and the gut health is really the center of our kind of health universe. And that's really the fundamental focus of both Debbie and my practice. I'd say it's probably what we talk about most on a daily basis. Probiotics are really important. They're actually good bacteria is what probiotic means. And you can actually take in chewable, powder, or liquid forms. I'll give you some brands in a second. But the main reason is so the probiotics are actually like really the first limb of our immune system in our gut. So they actually will digest food. They actually create vitamins, particularly like vitamin K, which is the new hot topic now. And in addition to that, they literally will educate the immune cells, the white blood cells. There's really great photographs of bacteria handing particles over to your white blood cells, kind of in concert with them. So pretty amazing. Just taking probiotics can decrease the number of times you get sick in a year. There's good studies showing that. So really, really important, and especially important, of course, if you have any digestive health issues. So probably my favorite of all supplements. And I think the one that probably gets the most effective results for people. The second thing, and the ones I would use, I really like, there's a lot of great brands, but we use Claire Labs. They make really nice ones. It's called Therabiotic Complete. They make a chewable, they make a powder, they make one for infants, they make a capsule. That's probably the main one we use. We also use Zymogen makes one called Probiomax. That's nice because it's shelf stable. You don't have to refrigerate it, so great for traveling. And it does have different bacteria. Those are probably the two main ones, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that even people with really young children who are not even eating food yet, probiotics are something you can start babies on from the time that you're nursing. A lot of women like myself, when I was nursing my daughter, you can literally just put powdered probiotic on your nipple and they can just take it in with the breast milk to bolster their immune system. There's certain strains you want to use before they're eating foods versus other strains once they start eating foods. But you can start these really from the get-go. And like Roy said, I mean, decreases allergies, asthma, like so many things in so many childhood illnesses.
Yeah. It's even good for nervous system, sensory integration stuff. We could probably have a 3-hour conversation just about probiotics. So,
and maybe we should sometime.
Yeah, maybe another time. And there are infant blends. Like I said, the Claire Labs has an infant Therabiotic Complete. It's actually, I think it's just called Infant Therabiotic. So really, really good one. So that's number two. The third thing I would say would be vitamin D. So, people think we live in Colorado, it's sunny 300 days of the year, we don't need vitamin D here. But the truth is that we're actually too far north. They've done nice studies where they've shown that how far north we are, longitude, I never remember, latitude. I can never remember which one it is, how far north we are, that we actually don't make vitamin D most of the year. So like north of Southern California, you don't make vitamin D for most of the year. So generally, we recommend vitamin D. It's super important. If you Google any disease process in vitamin D, you'll find a connection. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. It's not a vitamin. And why did I say sunshine? It has to do with the sun's, your skin, exposure to sun, and cholesterol in our blood. And so we just don't get the right UVB rays based on how the earth and the sun interact this far north. So I do recommend vitamin D year round for most people. If you spend a ton of time outside in the summer, you probably don't need it in the summer, but I also highly recommend getting it checked because most people are low. Almost, more than 80% of the people we check in our clinic are low. Yeah, almost everybody is. If you have any skin pigment, you're going to be probably lower than someone who has, nice Polish skin like myself. So, so vitamin D, super important, generally for infants through, at least in Colorado, for infants, through pre-puberty, about 1,000 international units. It's kind of a weird one. And then for adults, post-pubertal children and adults, I would say 2,000 and above. It depends. Some people need more than that. So good to get your levels checked.
Let me say one thing on vitamin D. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. Yeah. And so you want to actually make sure the vitamin Ds that we use are generally liquid vitamin Ds that are just suspended in an oil base. So usually either olive oil, sesame oil, or medium chain triglycerides. And so the fat is put right into the vitamin D. But you want to make sure that, I tell people to take vitamin D with food because you're generally eating fat when you're eating food.
Mm-hmm. That's a good tip.
The other good tip on vitamin D is, unlike most other vitamins, because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, so A, D, E, and K are all fat-soluble, and you can overdose on it. Have I ever seen anyone get a serious overdose? No, but it is possible, and it can be pretty serious if you do. So you don't want to overdo it either. 1,000 to 2,000 for an adult, is a good starting point if you're not getting your levels checked. If you are getting your levels checked, like I said, you might most likely need more.
Well, that brings me to, I know, for example, I take a supplement for hair, skin, and nails, and I take a bunch of other vitamins, a bunch of other supplements, many of which you've recommended, which is why I love the two of you. But I was reading the back of the label the other day, and I realized there's vitamin D in many of them, and I might be getting a little bit too much. And so I was just wondering if that's something you recommend, to always turn around and read the labels and just make sure that, especially for our children, that we're not overdoing it unknowingly, because it was also included in several of the supplements that child is taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we read labels for everything because we also read all our food labels if we're getting something that's not, obviously an entirely whole food. But yeah, what I found though, interestingly, Mel, is that particularly with vitamin D, unless it's in that fat-soluble form, like in an oil tincture like the ones we use, it's generally ineffective in my experience. So I use, for example, the VitaTabs and the active nutrients. Both have 1,000 I use just in those, but it's in a hard chewable form. And I think the conversion from a fat to a chalk to a fat again in your body just doesn't really work. So I find actually most people, believe it or not, need that extra 1,000 in the oil form. But again, we're really monitoring them, so I feel comfortable doing that. I think if you're not monitoring it, I'd probably err on the side of, just getting 1,000 total. But it's a simple blood test, and it's also inexpensive, so I do think it's worth getting as well.
And one additional thing to say about that is, when we're talking about any kind of supplements, is that B12 is not B12, vitamin D is not vitamin D. There's several forms of all of those. So when Roy and I are talking about vitamin D, we're talking about cholecalciferol, which is the active form of vitamin D3. And a lot of supplement blends have, I believe, ergocalciferol, some of the poorer absorbed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be totally honest.
More poorly absorbed forms.
I see that. That is really important to know. So did we hit all four of our foundational?
The last one is omega-3s. So omega-3 fats, we've all kind of heard of them at this point, I would imagine. And they're also called essential fatty acids. So what is essential? Why are they essential? Essential in nutrition means that you can't function properly without it. So that makes sense. And also means that our bodies don't naturally make it themselves. So for example, some animals do make omega-3s, like fish. It's not an essential food for a fish, but it is for a human being. And so omega-3s, pretty much when they've done studies, it's 98% of the world's population is low on omega-3s and can use more of them. Unless you're like an Eskimo or Inuit or live right on the coast and eat a lot of fish, you're probably not getting enough.
My brother.
That's true. Yes.
My brother eats lox like it's going out of style.
Exactly. He actually might be the exception. But for the most part, most people are not getting enough. And it's really easy. So fish oil is really the best way, and that can be cod liver oil or fish oil kind of interchangeably. And yeah, there's some really good forms for kids. Particularly picky kids. I like the Barlean's Omega Swirl. Yeah. It comes in 6 or 7 different flavors, and they're actually mostly pretty tasty. I cannot detect a hint of fish oil in them in terms of the flavor. And there's everything from the kid who likes lime sour tastes to very sweet, kind of more mango-y type of thing. So,
and our daughter, who is a super picky eater and who Melanie has helped with her eating and worked personally with us, she loves the lime Barlean's Omega Swirl.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, though our son finds it disgusting.
Yeah, and eats anything.
Yeah, and he's not picky at all.
And for everyone listening, I think the Barlean's is in the refrigerated section of
It is.
most stores carry it nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even King Soopers near our house has it. It's available everywhere. It's also available at our office and online store, but that's a great one because it's easy to get. Other ones that we like, we use, I really like orthomolecular products for kids. They make excellent children's stuff, and we use their Ortho Omega pearls. They're like little fish balls, and they pop in your mouth. Those are great. Nordic Naturals makes a comparable product, which is also very good.
A lot of my clients go to your office and they have the little balls you were talking about. And how many of my really hesitant eaters will pop one of those in their mouth and they love them.
I know. And they don't taste good. That's the thing. That the funniest thing is that kids love them up until a certain age, like 5, 6, 7, maybe. And then all of a sudden they realize they taste like fruity fish. So they're great with young kids.
They're great with young kids.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, sorry, Mel. The thing with omega-3s, so why is that important? So, anti-inflammatory directly in the body. It also is the really important lining for the nervous system, helps with the myelin sheath in the nervous system. It also just generally makes all our cells more fluid. So cells have kind of hard parts and fluid parts, and the omega-3s are really what makes it fluid, which is incredibly important for the immune system communication from cell to cell and for things to just function a lot better. So
anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Before or Debbie, let me know how you'd like to do this because I can tell you're thinking here. And should we circle back and talk about ideas for the more hesitant eater and the whole foods we talked about, or would you like to go ahead and jump into any other additional supplements? You decide.
I think talk about the food.
Yeah, let's talk about the food.
I think that's sort of the more unique component.
Yeah, exactly. What we always say is the word supplement means addition. So supplements really are an addition to a healthy diet. So obviously that's our goal for every adult and every child out there. So with parents that have children who are picky eaters, we want to start slow. And so what I always tell my clients is that if they have a kid that only eats a couple fruits or a couple vegetables, emphasize those. Like we want to work with what they have. And then we also can look for things that are similar. So if you can find, is it that your child likes the texture of something? Well, what vegetables or fruits have a similar texture? Is it that they like the consistency? What has a similar consistency? Et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And for some kids, doing things like, if they can grow a little of the food themselves, go to the store with you. Like I always tell people, I'm sure you've covered all this and more, Melanie. Yeah, but to do things like that with their child. And then, another tip that I usually give people with pickier children is that if they can find a flavor that their child really likes, like, okay, this is an extreme example, but okay, so that's not an extreme example. Like for our daughter, it was soy sauce. It was anything tasted good if there was soy sauce on it. So broccoli got dipped in soy sauce. Any food. What do I care if she's getting a tablespoon of soy sauce a day? If it got her to eat those foods. But I've had clients who have even had to go to a more of an extreme where it's like, something like a little bit of ranch dressing or creamy tomato soup, whatever it is. I usually have people steer clear of things that they don't want to serve their child all the time, like chocolate, on everything. And then, I just want to cover, like, sometimes if you can't make huge strides there, where we do have control is what we limit for our children. And I think that that's really important. So we want to make sure that we're limiting processed foods, that we're limiting sugars, because essentially, you asked this question earlier, is that whole foods have all their parts intact. And so what happens is the way that our body gets all the nutrients from them, and they're broken down into our bloodstream in a much slower fashion than processed foods, which kind of put us on this roller coaster all day long. And so where parents can have control is having, minimizing things like sweets or juices, or, as I said, processed or chemicalized foods, because those things are only going to make it harder for your kid to ever get real food. We actually, when you eat more processed foods, you get a coating on your tongue. And for things to taste good, it actually takes like a pretty extreme, like very sweet or very whatever taste there. And so when we're trying to get kids to, or adults, to adopt a healthier diet, sometimes they have to do it in stages so that their taste buds actually adjust to like enjoying more of the natural sweet or whatever the flavor is from the food. Okay. And then one more thing in terms of nutrition is just water, like adequate water. Sometimes kids will have better appetites if they're hydrated and drinking adequate water.
And that water is so important for also just getting everything to move through, because one of the biggest culprits of dehydration, of course, is constipation. And constipation cuts your appetite right away and leads to all sorts of other medical issues as well, bedwetting, etc. So I really, really love what you just said. And I love the fact that you're so respectful of the fact that no two picky eaters, and we use that term very generally, are alike. And so I might get kids on my caseload that only eat processed food, and we're not going to be able to limit them yet. But what we can do is put the child on a what they call a hunger schedule, so that so they're not grazing all day long. They're not grazing all day long, and they come to the table for meals and for snacks, even if they're all processed today. Now we're developing some hunger. And then I can start to introduce the more whole foods, get them learning to love a few whole foods, and then we can start to offer less and less of the processed.
Absolutely.
And I just love the fact, I feel like you said that really, really well, that it's not going to happen overnight, but ultimately this is where we're trying to get to.
And you have to start where you are.
You have to start where you are. You have to start with your, and as parents, and I think you guys know this too, like we want it to move faster, and the kids kind of set the pace and we just boost along.
I was going to say something to that effect as well, Melanie, is that, it's always slower than you want it to be in general with these kind of things. But I would also just take a good look at your child, because it's amazing how kids can thrive on almost no water and a really crappy diet. Now granted, some of those kids are going to have health issues, and we see a lot of that in our practice. But if your kid is thriving, if they're not getting sick a lot, and they seem to be thriving in other ways, I would just celebrate that a little bit, because I find that parents get into a very, very serious stress cycle around feeding their children, and because they know they're just not getting the proper nutrition. And of course, they should be eating, a healthy whole foods diet. But kids have a lot of like natural energy, a lot of natural chi. They can thrive despite pretty atrocious conditions, at least for what we would not thrive with at this point in our lives.
Well, and I know you so well because we've known each other for years and years. And, for everyone else listening, I really want to stress what Dr. Roy, he's not saying, they'll be fine, they'll grow out of it. No. You're the one who says, go see Mel. Exactly. You're the one who says, get some help. Let me connect you with my wife, Debbie, and she can help you with a lot of these ideas. But I think what you are saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have to be careful that the parents don't change the course of parenting because of the level of stress they're under. And that we celebrate the fact that the child's really doing pretty well. There's just more we can do to help them get to even a healthier place over time.
Absolutely. And a healthier relationship with food, which is ultimately what we want. But yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say, is that what I was hoping to get across is that, parental stress around it generally doesn't help the system. And that can actually prolong things and delay things. And so, unless there's a real medical emergency, I would just, trust that your child, when you do improve their diet, will eat more healthy, but in the meantime, that they can still be thriving for the most part, even sometimes with what you would think is not optimal nutrition.
I love that. And I know we have a lot of people who are going to want to ask questions, but I'm just wondering, just real quick, are there any other supplements that you want to mention that might be helpful, especially with viruses, et cetera?
Yeah, we can go through them fairly
quickly.
quickly.
Let's go through them quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
do you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start?
So other supplements that you would take on top of our 4 foundationals that really can help bolster immunity would be things like vitamin C, zinc. What else have we said?
So I'd say vitamin C and zinc are kind of like good foundational vitamins that are really safe to take and sort of almost everyone can take. We also talked a lot about specific immune supportive herbs. So things like, I really like, what's that?
We can link to all those.
We'll put links to all those. And then again, those are on our coronavirus article as well. But yeah, so things like elderberry. So I really like, there's a product called Immunoberry Liquid, or even just straight elderberry. The Immunoberry is nice because it has elderberry, astragalus, and some mushroom extracts. Mushrooms have beta glucans, which are amazing for your immune system, particularly fighting off viral infections, and just kind of optimizing your immune system. So that's a big one. Also, there's a product we really love that I use a lot. It's called Immunotics. It's by Zymogen, and that's all beta glucan. So it comes from starch instead of fungus, but kind of same family. And again, just really great for kind of helping you fight off infections. This time of year, I take one twice a day, every day throughout the winter. I think I went on an 8-year period of taking it every single day for 8 years. But yeah, it's amazing. Sorry about that. It's amazing for helping fight off infections and preventing infections. So that's a great one. Specific things, I'd say like antiviral stuff that I like. The homeopathic oscillococcinum has been shown to help with influenza. And I find it really helps even with the common cold too. It wasn't specifically studied with that, but I find for symptom relief, it's great. And they have that everywhere. It's probably out of stock most places right this second.
I was just going to say, I don't want most people who are listening to this to freak out because most immune and respiratory support products are sold out right now.
Online. Now, we do have a lot of them at our office if you happen to be in Boulder. We also ship all over. But I'd say we have a decent stock at our office right now. But yeah, online it's getting kind of thin. And I would say, again, so Immunoberry Liquid's the one I love, but there's tons of different elderberry products, and elderberry is fantastic.
And straight elderberry is wonderful. That's like a go-to for me. Olive leaf is another one that we don't take. I use that a lot with adults. Olive leaf is a fantastic immune support. And I like to go for ones that are really gentle for people that have more sensitive systems, and elderberry and olive leaf are 2 of my favorites.
A quick question on that. With the elderberry, do you take that every day, or do you wait until you start to that feeling of, I think I'm coming down with something? It
kind of depends on the person. So we have some people that just tend to get everything that comes through. And so we might put them on seasonal immune support from like October through, March or something like that. Whereas for me, I generally have a strong immune system that, I'll take those things as I feel them coming on. But amongst our clients, it's kind of a combination.
Exactly. And I would say for me with like school-age children, oftentimes I will put them on. And, some people, I don't see them ever. They come in for their well visit once a year and that's it. So they're probably not taking daily immune support. But the ones that are my frequent flyers that are getting sick a little more frequently or have maybe like asthma or something like that, I will put them on some immune support in a varying strengths depending on what their situation is. So I think particularly if you have really young kids and they're going into preschool, if you have them in daycare, then it's nice to do something like particularly like the Immunoberry Liquid, or at least the fundamentals with maybe a little bit of zinc and C or something like that.
Exactly. I was going to say for some people, just the 4 foundationals keeps their immune system working strong. You have to kind of assess in each individual situation.